Hi there, all you horror hounds. Welcome back to the crypt. So happy you could be here this evening. I'm continuing my series on made for TV horror films. And the one that I have for you tonight, yeah, it's pretty chilling, actually. Chilling in more ways than one. So grab your popcorn, grab a parka, because we're going to find out what's actually lurking in the shadowy hallways of this isolated research station. From 1973, it is A Cold Night's Death. This film stars Robert Culp and Eli Wallach as scientists who are sort of thrust into a nerve-wracking situation. They are sent to the remote Tower Mountain Research Station high above the Arctic Circle because all communication has stopped. And by the time they get there, they find the entire research station in disarray, and the one lone scientist who was manning the station is dead, pretty much frozen to his workstation. So, Robert Culp's character, who's named Dr. Jones, he begins to suspect that something might be going on here. It seems like maybe Dr. Vogel died of sort of natural causes. He's found in a locked room. There's an open window, so clearly he froze to death. But Robert Culp's character says, no, I've seen people die of exposure before, and this is a little bit different because Dr. Vogel seemed to die in a state of extreme panic. Eli Wallach's character, Dr. Inari, doesn't want to really hear anything about that and doesn't believe that there's anything unusual going on. Once the helicopter pilot takes Dr. Vogel's body away, the two scientists try to sort of settle in, but yep, those strange events continue to happen. Dr. Jones finds that there's a medical analyzer that's turned on inside the same room where Dr. Vogel died one evening, and the window is open, and he catches just a glimpse of something out of the corner of his eye, and he rushes over and stops the door from closing. But if it had closed and locked on him, it's very possible that ultimately he could have met the exact same fate as Dr. Vogel, because even if he could have gotten the window closed, but he couldn't have gotten out of the room, the conditions are so incredibly brutal as far as the temperatures. Yep, he obviously could have died. So he begins to believe, yes, they're not alone inside this research station, whereas Dr. Inari does not believe that. But as the next morning the generator is turned off, that thrusts both of these men into having to act very quickly to get everything back on, because the movie does a wonderful job of setting it up where even the slightest little mistakes in this very harsh, unforgiving terrain, it could be life or death. So very interesting, and Dr. Inari begins to actually suspect that maybe Robert Culp's character has more sinister motivations. So the intense isolation begins to lead way to paranoia. This movie is a really engaging thriller that does a masterful job of creating a claustrophobic atmosphere. With just the focus on the two main characters, it masterfully plunges you into the isolation and the brutal cold. The movie is reminiscent of the original Howard Hawks' 1951 classic, The Thing from Another World, but also John Carpenter's reimagining of that film from 1982, which was just called The Thing. Even after all these years, I find those special effects just completely dazzling. I think they totally hold up, and I don't want to spoil anything for you, so of course I'm not going to give away the ending here, but this film is much more about delivering the slow burn creepy mood instead of any kind of special effects. Bottom line, I guess here, don't expect aliens. I mentioned the other films because there is such an intense isolation in an Arctic research station in both films, but I'm not trying to steer you down the path of sci-fi. That's not what this movie is about. This movie was directed by Gerald Freeman, who was actually a seasoned TV director who helmed a lot of episodes of Night Gallery. He brings a real sharp sense of pacing and atmosphere to the film. He really is trying to do his best to make sure that the tension really never lets up. This film's minimalist approach actually helps enhance the feeling of paranoia and isolation because once the helicopter pilot leaves, it's really just the two scientists alone in this research station. And actually, having filmed this at the White Mountain Research Station in Bishop, California, it's a really nice touch. I mean, they certainly could have just filmed all of it on a studio somewhere, but it actually adds to the realism of this movie, which was a little bit unusual for made-for-TV movies at the time. They usually didn't go quite that far with the budget because they didn't have it, but here it really does make a difference. The powerful performances by Robert Culp and Eli Wallach, hey, they have to be noted here. The constant strain of their relationship and the completely opposing personalities, it's pretty dynamic. It adds some layers of psychological depth to this story. Culp plays the more easygoing of the two, right? And Wallach, he's all business, all focus. He's driven by routine and scientific principles. Those are his safety nets. These two personalities really clash as the strange events beginning to play out and their distrust of each other. That's when it starts to spike and all the paranoia kicks in. And as an audience, hey, we're on the same ride. We are just as confused about the strange events sabotaging the lab too. This film is probably not as well known as some other made-for-TV horror films, and even using horror, I have to use a little bit lightly because it's much more about the mood and atmosphere in this particular film than any real driving horrific events. And yet, it has developed a little bit of a cult following over the years, mainly because of its suspense and atmosphere. It's really praised for the ability to create that tension through the character interactions and some of the subtle eerie events that happen. Even though the ending might seem somewhat anticlimactic, at least at first, it's really the journey that makes A Cold Night's Death such a fascinating film. It's a quiet, haunting movie. Kind of tends to linger long after the credits have actually finished rolling. I'm trying to be vague here because I don't want to ruin this experience for anyone. Please don't look this movie up. Don't research anything about it. It's really a much better movie to just go into cold. Sorry, bad pun. The first time I saw this movie, I can remember reaching the end and thinking, is that it? I mean, it just feels sort of like Rod Serling could have taken this twist and sort of jammed it into an episode of The Twilight Zone, which wouldn't have really been all that unusual for Serling because he always kind of wanted to just punch the audience right in the face with man's inhumanity to man, or mankind tampering with nature, or the fear and distrust of the unknown. But I think the more that the ending lingers with you and the more questions that come about because of that reveal, I think that's what's really going to stay with you. Frankly, just the implications of the reveal, yeah, that's what got me. Because really, you're not going to see any of the aftermath. It really, the conclusion, the real hook here, it comes in just the last few moments of this movie. And so there's no sort of resolution. It is what it is. But I think all of those things that go through your head when it's finally over and done with, that's what's going to make this movie maybe a little bit more interesting for you. So if you're up for a little spine-tingling film, I think A Cold Night's Death is certainly worth a watch. Please come on back, hit the like and subscribe button. I want you to be notified whenever I drop a new video. This is available, I believe, on YouTube for free, so you can watch it anytime you want. And let me know what you think about it. So until next time, stay curious and stay scared.